Welcome to this episode of the Next Fit Nonprofit Podcast. I'm David Derrier, Head of Operations at Nexel, very first Salesforce partner in Europe since 2002 and actively involved in the Salesforce.org initiatives with nonprofits. So according to the latest nonprofit report produced by Salesforce.org, 75% of nonprofits reported an increase in demand for programs in 2020. So this clearly shows that social and philanthropic missions are more important than ever, and that foundations have a huge part to play in today's world, especially in a nearly post-COVID context. So to talk about the trends and challenges that foundations are facing today, I'm very happy to welcome Nicolas Boissez, Head of Communications and External Relations at Fondation Hirondelle. So welcome, Nicolas, and thanks for being with us today.
Welcome, David. Welcome, everybody.
So first of all, could you please tell us a bit more about yourself and also about Fondation Hirondelle?
Thank you, David. So my name is Nicolas Boissez. I'm in charge of communication and external relations at Fondation Hirondelle for already a few years now, but it's been even longer that I've been working at Fondation Hirondelle. I've been working at Fondation Hirondelle for 12 years now. Before being in charge of communication, I used to manage different programs. I was a program manager. And before working at Fondation Hirondelle, I've started my career as a journalist in France, and then I've worked for 8 years for the French Foreign Affairs Ministry in different countries like Vietnam and the Congo in the Central Africa region. So I've been working here at Fondation Hirondelle for 12 years because this foundation, as a former journalist, had a special meaning for me. Fondation Hirondelle was created by Swiss journalists 26 years ago. We are based in Lausanne, Switzerland, but we are mostly active in fragile countries faced with conflict, post-conflict situation, with humanitarian crisis, countries where people don't have good access to quality, reliable information. And so the mission of Fondation Hirondelle is to support local journalists, to support and develop local media in order to improve access to reliable information and also access to media that create dialogue for the local population faced with major crises. Because we believe access to information for this population can empower them as citizens and also in their daily lives.
Okay, that's very interesting. And as a nonprofit organization, you need to raise funds, of course. And how do you position Fondation Hirondelle when you need to sell the missions and the projects? How do you leverage the background of the Fondation, and how do you leverage the different missions and impact that the Foundation is delivering?
Well, first thing we try to explain is that information indeed can save lives. This is something maybe we are not very familiar with here in developed countries because we take it for granted. We believe access to information, well, that's normal. We have public service broadcasters, we have many private media. Of course, today we have the internet, social networks, where a lot of information and actually disinformation is available for everybody for free. But in many other places in the world, in the most fragile places, access to information, it is not for granted for most of the population. So when you don't have information, you are extremely fragile. You are extremely fragile because you don't know how can you take your decision. How can you know if you can bring your children to school? Is it too dangerous? Maybe they can be shot in the street, you know. Can you go to vote when there is an election? Where can you access water? Where can you access medicine? All these questions, they are vital for millions and millions of people. And if people don't have appropriate information on this, well, it can really be a serious problem to them. If we give them appropriate access to information, sometimes it can save their lives and the lives of their families. So that's the number one thing we try to explain. Information is as vital as access to education or to health, for example. And then secondly, when it comes to Fondation Hirondelle, well, we explain that we have a very specific expertise that has been built over our 26 years of existence. a very specific expertise of developing media program, training, supporting local journalists in local languages inside of these countries, in the most fragile places of the world where there are not many media that people can rely on. So we have that very specific media journalistic expertise that actually very few organizations have around the world. So these are the two messages that we try to position together. The utility of what we do, the vital utility of what we do, information saves their lives. And to implement this, we have a specific expertise that we have built over 26 years in the most difficult places around the planet.
So you were mentioning the fact that access to information was key. And there's a question that comes to my mind is that in 2020, disinformation was what we could say trendy with COVID issues, vaccines, and all this kind of stuff. Was it common or unusual for you to work on health-related topics instead of simply politics, conflicts, and so on?
Well, it's not the first time. We have faced other major health crises in different countries. I would mention, for example, the Ebola crisis. If you remember the terrible Ebola virus, which still exists, unfortunately, in places like Central Africa or Western Africa. We have worked in Guinea, for example, a few years ago to support local production of programs about the Ebola crisis that was going on there at that time, also to fight disinformation rumors that were going on at that time in Guinea. So we have, and also in I would say, every day in the different programs that we implement, for example, in Mali, in Niger, in Congo, or outside of Africa also, like in Bangladesh, for example, where we are also. In these programs, health questions, they are daily questions. Because, for example, in Bangladesh, the Rohingya refugees, they need to know where they can get medicine. They need to know why is it important for them to clean their hands. These are basic things that some people, they just don't have the education on that. They don't have the information on that. So we cover health topics for quite a long time. But of course, this COVID crisis for us, as for everybody else around the planet, is very, very special. It is, of course, a huge crisis that has hit all of our countries at the same time. And with this crisis, there was also an information crisis. It was an infodemia, as the UNESCO said it, at the same time that a pandemia, because disinformation, which is not new, we know that there is a lot of disinformation going on around us for many years, and even more and more with the social networks and the way these networks work. So we know disinformation, we have to deal with that now and for the time coming also. But around the COVID, disinformation had even a greater impact. So as a foundation, as an organization working on information, it is our core business. And also a foundation working in very fragile settings where there are major crises, where there are regular big health crises, where we were at the crossroads of these two problems. Disinformation and a major health crisis. And that's why we decided to do something with our partners and our teams in the field. And we decided to join forces to create new synergies in order to bring the news that people needed to know what was really going on about this COVID. Is it true or not? What are the symptoms? How can I protect myself and my family? Where can I get support? All these questions, we have tried to cover them as good as we could with our local teams of journalists, the local media that we support, in order to try to counter the effect of disinformation that are really massive.
So, thanks for this great answer. I will come back to fundraising and relationship to donors in a few minutes, but I would like to expand a little bit more the discussion on COVID. Did you have to find some workarounds to deliver your mission successfully on the field? You know, with all the all the aspects impacted by COVID, like the lockdowns, the reduced air traffic, how did it impact your daily life on the field?
Of course, it has directly impacted us. I would say in the headquarters, of course, we are based in Switzerland, but of course also in the field, in the different countries where we are. It was difficult to address this in the first times, just because the situation was so different between the different places where we have operations, where we have teams. For the first time, I would say the crisis was bigger and more direct, and was directly impacting the headquarters of Fondation Hirondelle more than the different field operation. Usually, as an NGO working in fragile context, we are used that in the field we have operations, we have teams that are facing major crises, and usually we are here in Switzerland very comfortable. I would say for the first time, we were more impacted here first than our colleagues in Africa, especially because, as you know, the virus, for some times, it took time for COVID to hit Africa. And even when it did, it was not as serious as one as feared. So we had to adapt. We had to adapt for the team here, again, for the first time, with, of course, home working, etc. And we had also to start putting in place measures that would allow our teams, especially our newsrooms, our journalists, our technicians working in Africa, to continue doing their job. Because even if COVID had not hit them as strongly as we could fear, the local government, they did put in place lockdown measures. And it made the job of journalists, of local journalists, very complicated for many weeks. So we had to innovate, to try to develop new ways of working, using home working to produce audio content, for example, far away from the studio, how to produce talk shows, how to produce reports when you are home working. That was a challenge. We also invest a lot of energy and resources in training, because our journalists usually are quite young. They don't always have all the necessary training when we recruit them. So we had to put in place new forms of training, remote training with remote trainers working from abroad, and to monitor also the impact of their work was another challenge. So yes, all of this, was new challenges for us, but it was also it was also very motivating for the team. It helped us to develop maybe our team spirit, to become a bit more innovative, a bit more reactive. So that was an interesting experience.
And how did COVID affect your relationships with donors, partners, sponsors? Because I assume that it was much harder than before to meet them physically, to have more frequent interactions. So what was the impact on your daily activities?
Of course, it was a serious impact too. But again, the impact was very different between the headquarters, the work we are doing at headquarters, and the field operation. In the field, like in Mali, in Congo, in these countries, the donors, they were still there. They were still there. People were there in the embassies, and so the contacts were still possible. So I would say locally in the field, the impact was not too high. The impact was much bigger for us here in the headquarters, like someone like me. It's part of my job to develop relationships with donors and with different kind of partners. And of course, all the physical contacts were not possible anymore. All the conferences, the meetings that we usually attend in Brussels or even in Geneva, we had to change that. We had to switch to webinars as everybody else did. And we had to imagine new ways of keeping in touch with the donors. Well, we had to just try to develop our capacity to interact digitally with these donors, using newsletters, using webinars, using also social networks to keep in touch. And so also that was a challenge, but that was very interesting because I think this is a trend that was going on even before COVID arrived. COVID just made it more important, more sudden, but we see that trend will continue after COVID will disappear, hopefully. So it was also for us the occasion to become a bit more digital and to rethink the way we can keep in touch with donors, but also with potential partners, with different stakeholders through different tools that we can use today.
But when you go digital, you also face maybe more competition. And it's linked to a question I really like to ask to all the nonprofits I meet in my job is, who are your competitors? Because I mean, that's not an easy answer. And on the one hand, you have loads of organizations that are very active, like yours, in a very specific area, in niche areas. But on the other hand, myself, if I want to donate as a private donor to an organization, I go online and I can donate to zillions of organizations. So how do you see your competition, and who would be your competitors in what you're doing?
That's a very good question. At Fondation Hirondelle, I would say that we have a feet in different fields. On one hand, we are an NGO. We are a foundation, but actually we don't have our own money. We have to look for donors. So we are a non-profit organization. So we have competitors among the NGO sector, especially the NGO sector working in fragile contexts, like peace-building organizations, humanitarian organizations. They sometimes can be or can become our competitors. They, most of the time, I would say, are more partners that we are trying to keep in touch with, and we are trying to partnering with some of them to answer, for example, big calls for proposals. But they can also be competitors. On the other hand, we also have a foot in the media field. We are like a media group because we develop local media in different countries. So we have also competitors from the media sector, which is a very different sector from the NGO sector. So we have a foot in each of these fields. We have competitors in these two fields, but competitors that we also see as potential partners. So it depends on, I would say, it depends on the opportunities. On some opportunities, we know that alone we will be too small. We will have less chances. So we try to build coalitions with NGOs, with other media groups, for example, or media development organization, as we call ourselves. So we are trying to keep in touch. We are trying to develop new partnerships, but we also assume sometimes that we are competitors. And this is very good. I mean, this is also something that makes us stronger, makes us more aware, pushes us to innovate. So competition is good. Competition is even necessary for a media organization. A media without competitors is a media that will have a serious problem and that may also disappear, because it's with the competitors that you look at yourself and that you look at yourself to innovate and to develop and to become stronger. So competition is good.
So you mentioned innovation. What does that mean for you as an organization? How do you need and how will you need, like other nonprofits, to differentiate yourself in the future? What will be the best way for you to stand out from the crowd and to, let's say, win the race against competition?
Big question. Well, innovation can be everywhere. I mean, we need innovation in the way we develop and we manage projects. We need to, as I was saying, we need more and more to build bigger coalitions, for example, to look for big fundings. Because the big donors, I'm talking here mostly of institutional donors, which are actually our main donors. Donors like the Swiss Corporation or the European Union are very big donors and important donors to us. And these donors, more and more, they ask for big coalitions. They don't want to give small grants to many different organizations. They prefer to give big grants to organizations that have to work together for that. So we need to be innovative in the way we can develop such coalition, in the way we can define the new partnerships that we have to imagine with these other organizations. That's for example, an innovation. Keeping in touch, as I was saying, keeping in touch with each other, but with our stakeholders, with our partners, with our donors, also needs serious innovations. As I was saying, of course, the world is changing. We will still continue to meet each other sometimes from times to times in meetings, in conferences, of course, but we know these occasions will be less and less. And most of the time now, we have to use the internet. We have to use the digital tools that we can use. And as you were saying, the competition is huge. There's so many webinars going on. We cannot follow up all of these webinars. We receive many invitations, and donors receive even more. So how to identify the good opportunities, how to stand out of the crowd, as you were saying, in this digital world. That's a big challenge, and we need to be innovative in order to stand out. So these are innovation that we need to develop. But as Fondation Hirondelle, as I was saying, we also have a foot in the media world. And of course, the media world also needs to innovate a lot. This media world is in crisis, in financial crisis for many years now, many decades even, and it's not going better. The traditional media are challenged by the social networks. We know that social networks can be a threat, but they also can be an asset. They also can help the media keeping in touch with their audience. For that, they need to monitor what's going on online, for example. And to monitor what's going on online, we need new tools. We need new tools, new methodologies. That's another key innovation, even for us at Fondation Hirondelle. Even if our projects are developed in the least developed countries, where internet access is still not reaching everybody, but still, we need to look at what's going on online. Even in Mali, in Congo, there are hate speeches. There is a lot of disinformation going on online. And our newsroom, our journalists, they need new tools. They need innovative approaches to be able to monitor what's going on and to be able to answer to that. So we need to work on the innovations at really all the levels of our organization.
Yeah, and I think you did not wait for COVID to digitize some of your processes. I mean, you started a project with Salesforce and Excel a couple of years ago. You were mentioning the tools that are needed to be put in place. You were mentioning the future of your activities with social media and the risk with there. I would like to ask you a last question to wrap the discussion up. So what recommendations would you make to small organizations and foundations that would like to strengthen the relationships that they have with all their stakeholders in these COVID or post-COVID times? What could make a difference at this level?
I would say first thing, just take time to think about it. Don't go too quick. Don't go too quick to, for example, invest in a new tool. Just first take time to think about it, think about your strategy, think about your targets. Who exactly do you want to reach? What are your priorities? Who are the main stakeholders that you really need to engage with? Think about it not alone, but think about it with your team. Take time to brainstorm. Don't go too fast. Think about it. That would be my first recommendation. And then when you start thinking about the tools that you need to improve your relationships with your stakeholders, well, put as many people from your organization as you can on board in this process. Don't take it alone. You need support. Of course, you need support from management. That's key in terms of appropriation. So really take time with management to put them on board, to have them on board, make sure they are on board, they are convinced they will support the project. And also then with the team, listen to your colleagues, listen to what they need, listen to their needs before presenting them something. If you want them to really be able to appropriate themselves with this tool and to be on board with the project. So listen, think about it, then put management on board, and then listen to your colleagues.
Great tip. Thank you. Okay, we're coming to the end of this episode. Thank you very much, Nicolas, for this great conversation. That was a pleasure.
Thank you, David.
We hope that you listeners, you enjoyed it as much as I do. And I really warmly encourage you to visit Fondation Hirondelle's website, hirondelle.org. Please do have a look at the amazing work that they are doing. Follow them on social media. It's really worth it. And I look forward to our next episode. We will keep promoting some great organizations that we are supporting via our Next Level Angels program. So stay tuned, stay safe, and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.